Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 3-0 Take, where we talk all things Major League Baseball. Here's Kyle Corbin and Nate Reyes. It all starts right now.
Oh, welcome back to the 3-0 Take, presented by SeatGeek. This is episode 500. I'll be your host, Kyle Corbin. I'm here with my co-host, Nate Reyes. Nate.
The 500 Club, buddy. Wow.
I legitimately never thought this day would come. I was looking back at this sheet of paper. It was just scribbling on it back in 2018. And it was
You still have this piece of paper?
It's probably somewhere, but I know that I have a picture of it. So I was just looking at the picture and I jotted down sort of some structure, like a little bit of an outline of what I wanted the podcast to be, knowing that I was going into it solo, because at the time and we'll get into all this later in the episode.
Yeah.
But hadn't touched base with you yet about getting on the podcast. So I was going to this thing solo. So I'm like, okay, I need to structure this thing out. And I tell you what, I'm glad I didn't continue doing this solo. I'm glad I didn't follow that structure, because if I had, 500 was never going to be in the picture, and if 500 was never going to be part of the plan, because my goodness, that was a mess. So I'm glad we didn't follow that route. But here we are, episode 500, starting off the new year. How about that?
Yeah, it's almost like we planned it.
It's almost like we planned it that way. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Welcome back. I mean, shoot. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the good stuff. It's already happened. When is your clause for Happy New Year wishes to end? How long do you have a buffer there? How many days are you allowed to say that?
I mean, today is probably sort of got to be the cutoff, right? Like it's a fresh week.
Yeah.
I mean, Monday is pretty much over now. But I mean, yeah. I mean, past the 6th, no.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I think what's his face? Larry David and Kirby Enthusiasm was like, you get 3 days. Like, that's it. Otherwise, you just don't say it, you know?
Well, the holidays sort of were aligned weird this year. Like
this
Christmas,
is a weird year.
Christmas and New,
yeah.
I don't know what day it is, to be honest with you. Christmas and New Year's were both on Wednesdays this year. So it just threw everything off. It threw the whole thing out the window. But
I know.
But here we are, episode 500 to start off the new year. We do have some. I definitely want to spend some time sort of celebrating the accomplishment, looking back, reading through some memories submitted by listeners. But there are some baseball topics we do have to touch on real quick. Some of which,
yeah.
I mean, we've been off we've taken the last 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
So some of these are certainly outdated, but I just wanted to be able to check the box to say we covered them. One of which is rather significant, and I wish we could have made it through those 2 weeks unscathed without getting hit with any breaking news such as this. But we'll just start here. Corbin Burnes, again, relatively outdated, so we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. But I mean, you texted me sort of in a state of confusion, just being like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But I think ultimately here, the takeaway is that this is one of those guys. And as we talk about each free agency, you have to take each guy that's looking to sign a new deal with a new team and put him on the spectrum of how much or how little does playing close to home matter to this guy.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same for every guy. We've learned that. Some guys could not care less. They just want to follow the money. Some guys, it's very important to them. With some guys, you already have established families back there. It's maybe where your home state, whatever the reasoning is. Corbin Burnes, however, fell on the end of the spectrum where that it was an important factor to him, and I think that's ultimately why he ended up there with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I'd assume. I mean, Milwaukee's out here for spring training, right? Am I crazy for saying that? I think they share a facility.
Yeah, they're out west.
Who do they share a facility with? I don't think they have their own. I don't know. So you got to assume that maybe there was that chapter. I don't know the details, but like maybe they called, he started calling Arizona home when he was still a Brewer. And it seems like maybe he's just kind of been on the road with Baltimore in that phase. And, obviously spring training being in Florida for that. So like having this break in the off season, you got to assume that like as Christmas is rolling around and just this whole, family at home, maybe you got family in town or loved ones or whatever. Just like as that goes on, there's probably a little, you and I are married. Like there's a little bit of a hint from the wife, like, well, this would be really nice if we could just keep this going, Maybe if it's just, maybe it's just a West Coast thing to extend spring training and be in your own bed for a little while. And then it turns into, all right, well, what if we just did this year round? So it's cool that like from what I could tell, from what I've read, it didn't really seem like the Diamondbacks were like in the hunt. I don't know how much communication there was there, but it seems just like, hey, let me hit my agent up and then let's give them a call and see if they're down. Here's our number. Can you get to that area? Can you get around, the 200 million area? And it just seems like what a cool thing if you're a Diamondbacks fan or in the Diamondbacks organization, like for this to fall in your lap of, arguably a top three, if, probably some teams and be a top priority this offseason of a highly touted free agent. And maybe you didn't consider yourself in the hunt, and all of a sudden you find out that this guy wants to be here and wants to be a part of your organization. I don't think it's solely about being at home. I think it's also recognizing that this is a really good roster. It's young. They were the top offensive team in baseball last year, in the NL at least. And now you're like, all they need is pitching. So it's a match made in heaven and seems like a win-win. I think your East Coast teams probably maybe missed their window of not getting this done sooner in the offseason. I don't know whose fault that is, but I'd bet the longer he's at home and with the holidays being around, it's like, this seems nice. Let's keep this going. You're still on holiday break, dude. You haven't been back to work yet. And you're like, I don't want this to end.
This is the start of my third week not being in the office. And I tell you what, I don't know if I ever want to go back, especially with getting hit with a snow day today. Oh my goodness.
If we're not immune to it, there's no way that these guys are. So like you said, I think there's probably different priorities for players and different types of points in their career, or, it's all the stars got to align. But like, man, what a good deal for the Diamondbacks.
That rotation. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. This makes me curious because I think Zach Gallen's a free agent next year. So it makes me curious of like, is this a soften the blow for next year kind of thing?
I mean, I don't even know if it's like a softening the blow because Corbin Burnes has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. So it's like, sure. if you miss out on Gallen, it's like, all right. I mean, you hate to not be able to bring him back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like you're necessarily bringing in a guy that's a tier below Zach Gallen, where you're like,
right.
If you're the front office, you're going, will this appease our fans? Like, is this okay? Like, is this enough? Like, no, you went out and got Corbin Burnes. I think they're in good shape.
Yeah.
Worry about the Zach Gallen situation when it comes.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's interesting. And if you do bring him back, I mean, that's a great 1-2 punch. Merrill Kelly, the 3 spot. Like,
what's what I'm saying? You get it for at least a year.
Yeah. And that's what makes me curious on, like, can they find a suitor for Jordan Montgomery? Can they go get a bat?
Get Jordan Montgomery out of there. My goodness.
The owner's coming out saying that. You know what I mean? Like, he's gone. He's definitely gone.
February by the latest, you have to think. Because you don't, if you're Jordan Montgomery, you do not want to run through that situation again. In fact, no, I'm not even going to say. I'm not even going to say February. By the end of this month, he's got to be somewhere else because you don't want to put yourself in the same situation.
It's so weird. I know we kind of touched on it when it happened, but like it's so weird for an owner to make that comment and just like catching the most ridiculous ricochet. And just, I know it's a down year, but like, dude, yikes. So I don't know, maybe the team kind of lost leverage there of like every other team in the league is like, all right, well, you're desperate to move this guy. We're not going to give you anything that you're asking for, you know? So that's probably the issue they're running into. But like, I don't know, there's question marks with like, you know, going from Christian Walker at first base to Josh Naylor. Like, is Josh Naylor your everyday first baseman, or do you get a Corbin Burnes and then just like really push all your chips in the middle of the table and go for a Pete Alonso and say, let's run it. Like, let's.
No, you got it. Josh Naylor's your guy. Josh Naylor's your guy.
Or does he step into that Jock Peterson role and just DH every day? You know, he's not a good first baseman. And to have a young infield and go from a Christian Walker, who's a Gold Glover, to a Josh Naylor, like that's got to be a part of the equation for me. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what else they do. It's not like this offense struggles in any way. Like I said, they're top offense last year in runs scored, I believe. So like by a pretty wide margin, they had the top scoring offense. So this is when it came out, I was like, what? Like, this is so random. And then as details started to come out, I'm like, all right, well, I mean, I guess this makes sense. And you got to be happy if you're the Diamondbacks for this to fall in your lap.
Keeping it in the NL West, your guy, Hyeseong Kim, not Hyeseong Kim, Hyeseong Kim.
Yep.
Is heading to the Los Angeles Dodgers on a 3-year, $12.5 million contract. I was thinking about this today. I don't know the guy from Adam, and I'm sure the experts that are covering this guy, this transaction and this guy's career know far more than I do. But do we not think that this guy is getting a little bit
overplayed?
Like the coverage just seems to be, it seems to be far outpacing
the talent,
the caliber of player that you're getting, because they're already talking about him being, you know, like this guy that you can sort of float around or whatever. And now obviously with the news breaking tonight of the Gavin Lux trade, you'll have even more flexibility to sort of moving him around if you need to, I guess. But I'm like, you're giving him $12.5 million over 3 years, and we're talking about this guy as if he's the infield equivalent of Roki Sasaki. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
it has been weird. It's gotten a lot of play, and I don't understand.
Just maybe a little too much play.
Why necessarily? I don't know, man. But it's clear the Dodgers are just committed to being the deepest team in baseball. Like, what they've proven over the last year plus is that we will go get the most talent, but we're also going to be the deepest in case there's any injuries. And that's clearly,
which
they're
always
injury proof. They're injury proof right now. Like, you saw that with the rotation last year. I mean, they could lose a Freddie Freeman in the postseason. They could lose a Mookie Betts. They could lose an Ohtani for a certain stretch, and they're so deep. They spent $17 million on freaking Michael Conforto. And you're like, what? How does that guy keep getting paychecks, by the way? Like, no offense, but like $17 million.
I don't know.
He hasn't done anything since like 2019. But this is a team that's just like, they're willing to do everything 110%. And to spend $12 million on and take a flyer on a guy.
This is a depth piece for them, whereas like any other team that maybe that snagged this guy, they're going, like this is going to be a pretty integral part of our infield next year. And the Dodgers, like, he may not even be on the team by the end of the year. Who knows?
Bro, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think any team is even doing 3-year deals on depth pieces at all.
Insanity.
It's weird. It's wild. I don't know. Like, good luck. Maybe. I don't know. Like, I'm curious to see what kind of talent he has. He's just a slap hitter for the most part, right? He just slaps it all, from line to line.
I mean, I'm not trying to knock the guy. I'm sure he's going to provide the Dodgers exactly what they're looking for, because that's how they run that franchise. They identify a need, they go out and plug the hole. I'm sure he's going to be great for them, because the other thing you have to take into account too is the Dodgers have a pretty decent history with utility men and roster flexibility. Like, they just figure out ways to make it work because they can afford to do so. Like you said, because they're so deep. So even if a guy maybe doesn't pan out, it's like you almost forget about it because he's sort of pushed to the back. Because then they've just got the next guy up in line. So I'm not knocking the guy, but it just seemed like we were talking about. It just seems to be getting a little bit too much play. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of something that's not super proven, and everything that I've read is like, we're not sure if he's big league talent worthy, and then all of a sudden it's like he got a ton of play for a few weeks, and now it's a 3-year deal. But I mean, they can write a lineup for literally any scenario they come across.
Exactly.
In a season, and the flexibility of having 3 or 4 guys that can rotate between major positions and give you production offensively at the same time. It's like, anybody that is hating right now is just strictly jealous. Me. I'm jealous.
A team that's, speaking of jealous, a team that I think is jealous right now of these moves that are being made around the league, the Baltimore Orioles. I don't know what's going on with the Orioles. And look, I know I bring this up probably more often than people like hearing, but that the offseason where Trey Turner was looking for a home, and I said, look, this was pre-Gunnar Henderson rising to the MVP scene that he has created for himself. But I was like, the Orioles, with the baby O's that came up, with the baby birds that came up, there was plenty of talk about like, well, can we move this guy to this side of the infield? And can we move this guy to this corner? So at the time, I'm going, okay, maybe Gunnar Henderson isn't the answer for them at short.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe slide him to third and go out and get a guy like Trey Turner. They haven't done it. Like, that was the last time I think we talked about them making any sort of big splash, because at this rate, I mean, they went out and got Corbin Burnes, but clearly we saw how that turned out. Walked right out the door. It's just making you wonder: has the front office, has ownership, who we thought were going to come in with all these grandiose changes, have they forgotten that like they also need to spend money in order to supplement this young talent that they have? Because I'm really starting to wonder, because they're just not making splashes. And I say all that to say that we've arrived here at Charlie Morton, signing Charlie Morton of all people to a 1-year, $15 million deal. Good for Charlie Morton. That's quite a payday at what, 41? Yeah. But it's like, you're above this, Baltimore. You're above this. You don't need to be, and no disrespect to Charlie Morton, but you don't need to be dumpster diving for 40 plus arms. You've got the youth. Now go out and supplement it with proven talent that you can pay for, that you don't need to give anything up for.
It's all been a head scratcher, man. Like, it's all been a head scratcher. Do you bring back Santander? Like, is that your last opportunity for a move to somewhat salvage what seems to be a massive ball drop here? like, I'm really confused. And look, call me a hater if you want. You're probably going to say it, but we're talking about an organization that tanked for years consecutively. And don't get me wrong, there's still a process in evaluating and drafting the correct talent. There's plenty of draft picks that don't pan out. They've totaled up a lot of studs, what seem to be studs. So they've hit on that, and they've done that well. But let's face it, it was consecutive years of tanking. And I just wonder, like, what kind of message does that eventually send after years and years of, like, this is what we do best, and then not really knowing how to turn the corner and turn the page after that. Not really knowing how to take that organizational mindset and shifting it into being a winning culture. And we've seen organizations where they have buku talent and it's oozing, but they just can't seem to figure out what's missing. And you've seen organizations now that have just committed to a winning culture. And it's odd, but I'm not overly surprised when you sit back and analyze, like, hey, you know, this is the reason they're built this way is because of this. I'm not surprised they can't get over the hump and change their mentality, get into a new chapter. So I don't know, man. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be surprised if they roll out 94 wins next year. Sure. And, you know, are still in the hunt because, like, the AL is kind of up for grabs. But then at the same time, like, I'm also not going to be surprised if they're, you know, barely edging out the Blue Jays for third place in the division. Like, I don't know where I'm at with them. It's hard to tell.
I mean, I tweeted it out the other day. Zach Eflin is the highest paid player for the Baltimore Orioles right now. Zach Eflin. So, like, we can talk about, well, they're most likely going to find a way to squeak out 92, 94 wins even.
Yeah.
But that just means that the offense is going to have to step it up even another level to account for what is ultimately a lack of rotation depth. Like high caliber rotation depth, because you just don't have it.
Yeah, man. I mean, look across the road, like, look across the just the division as far as rotations go. And, like, do you have a 1-2 punch that can go up against a Garrett Crochet or, you know, a Max Fried and Garrett Cole? Like, there's names in this division, like, even going over the Blue Jays, I know it was a down year, but, like, Kevin Gausman, like, you have a lot of young talent, but they're coming off of injury. So, like, they haven't done anything.
Jose Barrios even turned a corner
right.
It's points last year. So,
like, they have, you know, big names and Grace. I'm sure Grayson Rodriguez is going to be good. I think we've seen flashes of it, and I'm sure he's going to be great. Bradish, I'm sure these guys are going to be really solid, but, like, I don't know. Like, you can only roll the dice on so much youth. And at some point, like, I felt like Corbin Burnes was, in my mind, needed to be like a safety net fallback plan, not getting Blake Snell. And now they've missed both. Flaherty's still out there, but I think we saw that, like, that didn't work out great the first time. He ended up being in the bullpen after, you know, a couple rough starts. So it's like, there's nowhere to really pivot here. And outside of making trades, I don't know. And how comfortable are you going to be pulling in a top end or frontline starter midway through the year at the deadline and banking on that being your savior?
I have seen as late as or as recent as today, Luis Castillo's name tied to the O's, but
that has to happen.
But again, that goes back, like, you didn't have to part ways with any pieces in your organization. If you would have just jumped, if you just would have jumped at the opportunity earlier in the offseason, you wouldn't be in a situation now where you're having to scramble to maybe make trades that are going to ship out guys that you were hoping to hang on to.
Well, especially with the new structure of deals that you're starting to see, where it's like, here's a 2-year deal with an opt-out. and a crazy amount of AAV. If you're so worried about needing to pay an Adley Rutschman, a Gunnar Henderson, if you're so worried about having to fork over that money soon, then don't do a super long-term deal for some of these names. Do a shorter deal with an opt-out and let these guys revisit the market again after a few years, because there's plenty of names that are happy to do that. And they just swing and miss on a ton this offseason. And now we're all scratching our heads saying, like, are you ever going to get over that hump? And I bet it's a pretty frustrated fan base. Oh, well. Other teams in division getting better, man. You're just sitting there.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's all we're saying is we can sit here and talk about how the Orioles window is far from being closed, but we're all human. We recognize how quickly time passes, and it won't be too long before we're going. The Orioles better do something now. Look at how we're talking about the Phillies. Yep. And look at how just a few years ago we're going, they're going to be a perennial pennant winner coming out of the National League. And we're talking like, I don't want to put that on the O's, but I'm just saying, just capitalize now while you still can. That's all I'm saying.
This is the time to do it when you have money to spend and a core that's controllable. Like, eventually the core is not going to be controllable and you're going to have to pick and choose. Some of them are going to leave because you can't afford everybody. And then now you're banking on a window happening around less names. I don't understand the hesitancy that they've had. And again, I don't know. You and I are both fans of an AL East team and we're happy with it, but it's weird.
Keeping it in the DMV, Josh Bell heading back to the Nationals on a 1-year, $6 million deal. Nothing terribly exciting going on with this deal, but it was worth noting that he is coming back home, if that's what you want to call it. He saw a good deal of success in DC. He hit 278 with 41 homers, had 145 RBIs across 247 games. And this was pre-trade to the Padres when he actually got packaged with Soto. I don't know. I kind of feel bad for this guy, honestly, because I've seen a handful of tweets talking about like how much more meaningless baseball is this guy going to be subjected to, and it's like it's kind of true when you think about it. Like you think about his run with the Marlins, the D-backs, Cleveland. I get didn't necessarily. He was a
Padre before it was.
He was Padre before it was cool to be a Padre, I guess. So I mean, and obviously DC once already. So I don't know.
I don't know, man. I will say, I mean, I do like what the Nats are doing. I think they're moving in the right direction. It's hard to really see any of this being enough, considering how top heavy the NL is. And I mean, again, like if you're in the NL Central, it's division or bust. And if you're in the NL East, you're looking to compete with the Padres and the Diamondbacks out west for wild card spots. And that's just kind of how it is. So I don't know. I mean, I like what they're doing. I like some of the pieces out there, and I think it's promising talent. So
sort of under the radar, and I would have added it more as like a topic to touch on here, but again, I didn't really see it until a little bit earlier today. But they brought back Trevor Williams, which I think sort of an underrated move there, because before getting hurt, he was throwing the ball extremely well. Like I want to say he was hovering in like the high twos, mid to high twos there for a while. Before getting
wise,
hurt.
It was through the roof too, wasn't he? I mean, I think he was like top 3 in baseball deep into the season in saves.
No. Are you thinking of Finnegan? Or no. What's
not
his name?
Finnegan.
What's his name? What's his name?
Same.
Oh,
He's
goodness.
long hair, beard, right?
What's his name?
Think of it.
No, Finnegan was their closer at one point last year.
Finnegan? I think I was thinking.
You were thinking of Finnegan. You were thinking of Finnegan.
I think I was thinking. Of
No,
Finnegan.
Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams made 13 starts last year before hitting the shelf. But he finished the season with a 2.03. So he was throwing lights out. They're making, like, they brought in friend of the pod Mike Soroka. That sort of went under the radar a little bit.
They're doing competitive things.
Take a
That's all you
flyer
can
on
ask
him.
for. That's all you can ask for.
Nathaniel Lowe.
Yeah, that was the other trade. That's interesting. A little rotation between first and DH there. All right.
Like, if you're not going to take a massive leap forward this offseason, just bring in recognizable names. Because there for a few years, that was the issue. It's like people in this area, they're like, I don't want to go to Nationals games because I don't know anybody on the team. And we are, like, you and I obviously knew the names, but to the average fan, it's like, nobody's going to want to go see Joe Blow go 0 for 3 with a walk. Like, there's no interest in that. So at the very least, just bring in some more recognizable names and maybe try again next offseason with the bigger splash or two.
Williams.
The two deals that happened this evening, Gavin Lux, Michael Lorenzen, we sort of alluded to the Gavin Lux situation already, but he is headed to the Cincinnati Reds via trade. The Dodgers in return are getting outfielder Mike Sirota, not Soroka, Mike Sirota, and a competitive balance round A pick, approximately around like 37th pick in the draft. And this is following the Hyeseong Kim signing last week. And I think this ultimately here for Gavin Lux, this brings closure to sort of a up in the air situation for some. It seems like for some time it's been a question mark surrounding, like, what's the deal with Lux, because what was it coming into, what was that, 2023 when he was slated to be the starting shortstop and that he got busted up in spring training, right?
Was that 2023?
Yeah, it was 2023. You know why?
Yeah.
Because the World Baseball Classic is when Edwin Diaz went down. And I remember people talking about, like, this is why this tournament is garbage. You have elite players getting hurt. And Gavin Lux in spring training went down with an injury and missed the year. And
that's right.
You're sitting there going, well, is he in this World Baseball Classic? No.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he got hammered with, like, is his arm dead last year? Everyone was like, he's got no arm, he's weak. Yeah. Yeah. Weird. I mean, maybe it's just a little change of scenery. Go play every day, not be in the spotlight of LA, not be, like, the sole weak link in the most dominant roster ever assembled. Give him a chance to do that. I'm a little confused by the Reds, to be honest. Did they have beef with Jonathan India that just no one knows about? Like,
well, I mean, you remember they were, like, actively trying to shop him. What was that, last year even? Yeah. And then didn't shake out, I think, the way either party maybe wanted to, or wanted it to. So maybe it was just a bad blood situation. Yeah. Maybe. Who knows? But it's very possible.
Yeah. Go get your ABs. It's a good ballpark to hit in. Fresh start. New threads. Few threads cleaner. The black, red, and white is just...
It's a great combo.
Top tier. It's a top tier color scheme. Yeah. Speaking
of the Reds, former Red Michael Lorenzen is staying put in Kansas City. 1 year, $7 million contract, $12 million mutual option for the year after. Last year between the Rangers and Royals posted a 3.31, a 1.24 whip, and a 97 to 60 strikeout to walk ratio over 130.1 innings.
Depth, baby. Rotational depth. Eat up those innings. None wrong with it. Had success. I'm impressed by them. I know there's a lot of people saying it was a flash in the pan. They may not repeat same success this year, but I like what they're doing. Go get moves where you can. You know what I mean? Know who you are. Bring it back Seth Lugo right away. I like that. Fan of that. Just getting it done right away.
Yeah, the Royals, I think, were intent on setting the tone pretty early, and I think that's a lot.
It was like the first deal.
It was one of the early ones, and that's more than a lot of teams around baseball can say, and especially when you think about teams that we thought would have been more active, like the Orioles, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, it's. I'm not going to hate on the move.
The
$7 million, it's fine.
Yeah. With Walker, you got to remember they traded for that Hyeseong kid from the A's last year. Shore up the bullpen a little bit. We all know Cole Reagans is the new Cole Hamels. So it's just smart stuff. The aforementioned Jonathan India being added. Like I like all the things they're doing. What's not to like? Doing it in a budgetary way. A sneaky budgetary way.
Where you're not bringing back 41-year-olds.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'd much rather have the Royals offseason than a lot of teams' offseason.
Correct. Speaking of the offseason, that about wraps up our offseason talk for this particular episode, which means now we can switch gears. Look, if you're just here for the ball talk, I guess this is where we part ways. But if you've been listening to us for any length of time, stick around, because now we're gonna be transitioning into a little bit of time of reflection, a little bit of celebration as we talk about the last 500 episodes of the 3-0 Take. Ooh. So let's start here with an idea that you had thrown out back when we were brainstorming about this a while ago, where you said, like, let's just take a snapshot of baseball.
Yeah.
When we started this, just to put into perspective, like how long we've been doing this, sort of where the game was at when we started doing this, and do a little bit of compare and contrast, knowing where the game's at now, and then looking back to where it was in 18. I mean, in no particular order. I've just got some random nuggets here that I can read off, and we can talk about, and then we'll get into some other things later on in the show. But debuts in 2018. A guy by the name of Shohei Ohtani.
Sure.
Made his debut in 2018. Ronald Acuna Jr.
Sure.
Made his debut in 2018 when we started. And if you've heard us mention this before, we didn't start at the beginning of the year because for whatever reason, I didn't decide to pull the trigger to start the podcast until like the summer. So I think we ended up starting in like July or August. So we were able to get a few months of the season in. But anyway, 2018, Shohei, Acuna, Soto made his debut in 18, among others. But those were some of the ones I wanted to highlight. Retirements. Adrian Beltre retired in 2018. Joe Mauer, and Mets captain, who was actually, it was just announced today that he's getting his number retired next year or this coming season, David Wright. Those were just a few of the guys that
still active.
Were still playing when we started this thing. Speaking of active, the oldest active player when we started this, Bartolo Colon, who retired at the end of the season. So he was still when this show began, Bartolo Colon was still putting around The old ball league.
Still don't understand the amount of attention that man has gotten.
I never understood it. There for a while I got it, but I'm like, this is a cult. This is a cult now. This is a cult. The youngest player when we started, Juan Soto. I'm going to let you guess this one. Who do you think was the highest paid player in 2018?
2018 highest paid player.
And I'm completely putting you on the spot, but it made sense, but there was a little bit of like sticker shock. It kind of blew my mind a little bit when I saw it because I'm just like, man, this is one of those things that puts into perspective how long we've been doing this.
I don't know, maybe Albert Pujols.
Clayton Kershaw.
Oh,
$35.5 million.
Jeez,
he was making that year. Speaking of money, the San Diego Padres, who we now know are willing to go to whatever ends to pay a guy to spend money. Like you talk about having a hole, like burning a hole in your pocket. They have got money to spend. The San Diego Padres in 2018, when we started this, they were 24th in payroll, just passing the $100 million mark at $101 million.
Yikes. Ooh. Simpler times.
Simpler times. Casey Mize was the top pick in the draft that year.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Detroit Tigers. The Guardians were still the Indians. MLB had implemented the rule change of limiting mound visits.
Oh, we were hating it too.
Oh, yeah. There was nothing that the commissioner's office could suggest.
I bet there's
we
people that now don't even realize that there are a limit on mound visits.
That's what, again, points to how long we've been doing this. Like, you kind of just think of it, oh, yeah, like,
it showed up and it's snuck into the background of rules.
Kind of here. The All-Star game, I'd pulled the starting lineups from the All-Star game that year. I won't necessarily read them all. Javi Baez was the starting second baseman for the Cubs.
Wow.
Matt Kemp was starting in left for the Dodgers.
Sure.
Nick Markakis was starting in right for the Braves. Brandon Crawford was at short for the Giants. And Max Scherzer was your starting pitcher representing the Nationals. And this was 18 was in DC too. So you had Harper starting in center that year.
So when you won the home run derby.
That's correct.
Yeah.
A wild one, by the way.
Yeah. Great. Wild. But great.
Controversial.
Yeah.
Even with the clock. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
A bunch of this.
Yeah.
American League, it wasn't as, I think the National League was more of like a shock to the system. American League, I mean, you got Mookie Betts, you got Altuve, Trout, JD Martinez, Jose Ramirez, Aaron Judge, Machado, Jose Abreu, which I believe that was, no, he didn't win MVP until 2020.
Wild. Machado is still an Oriole, so that's
fair. Yeah. Salvi Perez was behind the dish, and Chris
a lot of that team still doing their thing.
AL was they were in the heart of the run of just American League dominance.
Yeah.
The Oakland A's were a postseason team that year. They ultimately lost in the wild card to the Yankees.
I was correct. Went to that game.
The Orioles team, actually Orioles and Royals, both two teams that we talked about in our current event talk. The Orioles finished 47 and 115 that year. Royals finished 58 and 104 that year. 2018, when we started, was the fourth and final year of Chris Davis's stretch of hitting 247. He had done that 4 years in a row, and he also led all of baseball with 48 homers that year. I did not register.
Tough.
I did not recall that until I saw
no
it.
one remembers the good part. Just a terrible arm in left and hitting
mediocre,
the same batting average year after year.
Red Sox won a franchise record 108 games, ultimately winning the World Series that year. which I gotta say, just really set the trajectory of the podcast in a
It
great
sure did.
direction. Oh, I mean, we had plenty of material that October. It was excellent.
Yeah, that was something.
Bullpen carts returned to baseball in 2018. And then the last note I got here, the Tampa Bay Rays, this, like, jokes aside about some of the other stuff.
This one hits.
This one shocked me. 2018 is, you could say, revolutionized the game of baseball. Tampa Bay Rays introduced the opener in 2018.
Man.
And here we are, just starting out 2025, looking back, 7 years later?
What a look back.
My goodness.
Ugh.
And then your award winners that year, you had Acuna and Ohtani winning Rookie of the Years. You had DeGrom and Snell winning their Cy Youngs. Snitker and Melvin won Manager of the Year, and MVPs, you had Yelich and Betts.
Christian Yelich winning an MVP.
And that's,
dude.
And that's your state of baseball when we started this thing.
Crazy. That's insane. I like it. We forget how quickly this game can change.
It's
man.
insane,
how quickly
dude.
like dominant names become afterthoughts.
I had the same exact thought when I was going through this.
How young names are, you just don't even really like truly pay attention to them. Like we didn't, let's be honest, like we gave Ohtani his flowers, but like we didn't really like go deep into what Ohtani was, and now look at him.
Well, yeah, because I mean, remember when Ohtani came over, like there was, like I think we were justified in still having a little bit of hesitancy with
like there's no way he's going to continue to pitch and hit.
Like is this going to translate? Because how many like the cases in which Japanese players coming over not working out, I think far outpaced the the scenarios in which it did work out. So like we're going, okay, you know, we're hearing about this guy being the Japanese Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
But let's pump the brakes. And he was one of the
he used to have a big leg kick back then too.
Yeah. He was one of the few that panned out.
Yeah. Different times, man.
So that was baseball when we started. But when we did start this thing, I sort of hinted at it earlier. Very, very interesting start. Like I'm going into this thinking I'm gonna just ride this thing solo for as long as I can, and if it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. And I think it was one episode in.
Yeah.
And then I gave you a call and I said, I hope you're prepared to do this because I'm not doing this by myself.
I remember where I was so for those who don't know, haven't heard this part of the story yet, Kyle and I have known each other since we were 2 and 3. We grew up neighbors, grew up playing ball together through Little League. I moved out west and kind of just like, you know, lived teenage life, you know, separately, and kind of stayed in touch occasionally on a visit back and forth or whatever. But for the most part, we just hadn't talked in a while. And then I saw the Dirt to Diamonds page on Facebook that had popped off from that baseball science post. And
Correct.
I think I shot you a text and I was like, dude, like good work on this page. Like it's going nuts. And I remember because I was in the parking lot of a Chipotle when I saw it, eating a burrito, and I saw the post, and then I texted you, and then you were like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing like, you heard about these podcasts? And I was like, no, not really. Like, what do you do? And yeah, man, you're like, I think I'm going to give it a go, but like, I'm also maybe thinking about having a co-host. So I'll let you know. For the love of God, please do not go back and listen to those episodes. But
I almost pulled it. I almost pulled your first introduction to the 3-0 take world. But I was like, I can't do it.
The most fearful, shakiest voice you'll ever hear. And we just didn't look back, man. Yeah, I was recording, just doing it on my phone. I don't know. Did you have a microphone back then? Did you actually?
I had
get
like a
mic?
Blue Yeti.
That
it was
Yeti?
like, it was not ideal, but it was better than, I will say, your situation, because you
Literally
were
just holding my phone up.
holding your phone, and we would have to have you go into your car and like record in the car, because like whatever rooms you were in at the time just
didn't work.
It was too noisy, and I was like hyper aware of just like background noises, and I'm like, oh, what was that? I hear that. When ultimately nobody cared, it didn't matter. But I would go back and I would edit those early episodes for hours, and I'm like,
we would do it.
Nobody's even listening to these early episodes, but I'm spending hours on them. And I got to a point where I was like, it doesn't matter anymore. People just don't care. And then we eventually were able to upgrade.
Pods dropping at like 2-3 a.m. Eastern time.
I'll never forget that post I put on the IG story. It was like 3 a.m. I don't know who I thought I was, but I had finished up editing an episode, and it had taken me forever, because I think go figure, we were having technical difficulties. We always have technical difficulties.
Yeah.
And so it was like 3 a.m, and I remember like laying in my bed, and I've got my head on the pillow, and I've got my like camera facing me, and I remember it was something to the effect of like, I'm exhausted right now, but I'm doing this for you guys. Episode's out now. And I'm like, it's 3 in my head. I'm like, it's 3 a.m. Nobody cares. They'll see it in the morning. It's fine. But I was like, this is, this is the work you got to put in, I guess.
Dedicated to the
when
craft.
you're laying the foundation.
Since the jump.
Crazy.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
But it's certainly grown. It's certainly taken off, and it's taken us some places.
Yeah.
What was the first place it took us to? We were able to go to Denver, right? Was that our first? Yeah, that was like our first trip.
Yep.
Went to a couple Rockies Red Sox games. Got to record, I don't remember what episode it was, but we recorded an episode from a mile above sea level in that famous purple row there at Coors. We got to record an episode from that very row, which was really cool. That's one of my favorite. When I look back, I'm like, like it was kind of silly. Like we didn't have to do that, but I'm like, you know what? Let's just bring our phone in, go up there.
Someone like awkwardly sat like 3 rows back from us. You remember that?
Yeah. I'm like,
really, bro?
We're literally up in the corner. We were the only
4
people up
sections that are empty.
Insane.
Yeah.
Like what the guy was like, what are these guys? What do you think these guys are up to?
Just cracking peanuts.
Insane.
Yeah.
We were able to go to the wild card game, which that's got to be one of the best games I've ever been to. Of course, bias playing into that, but that Red Sox Yankees game where Cole started.
It was a great experience. It was a brutal result for me, but it was a great experience. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that game.
That was my first time to Fenway for a game. I'd been to Fenway before, but not for a game. So like being on the street for BP and freaking
brushing shoulders with Zach Hampel
out there. We're just throwing hate at him during
he was catching strays. Like we were recording our vlog. He was catching strays.
What's crazy is that we've seen him we've seen him in multiple places.
Yeah, we've been in the same ballpark as him multiple times since that moment, which is just so wild. Weird. But
yeah, I know. That was a good trip though. Really good trip. Flying out to you, driving up. That was good.
And then, that was our first, that was our first true vlog. Was that wild card game, the trip up to Boston. That was fun. If you need your baseball fix, if you need your 3-0 take fix and you haven't checked that vlog out, go back. It's on our YouTube. It's on our vlogs playlist. That's a fun one to go back and rewatch. 2023, we're able to do a couple a couple trips. We did the World Baseball Classic out there where you're at in Phoenix.
Bunch of spring training games with it.
Did a bunch of spring training, and then I guess it was later that year, you flew out here. We drove up to Baltimore for the ALDS, caught a couple ALDS games. So
hoping Philly would advance so we could go to, or not win in a sweep in that series, I believe is what it was. I think they swept that series and we wanted them to not, so we could actually go to Philly the next day.
I remember exactly where I was when Bryson Stott hit that grand slam to ultimately like put the nail in the coffin. I was literally driving to Dulles to pick you up.
Yeah.
And I had it on my phone.
I think I was watching. Yeah, I was like, I paid for internet and I was watching as we're landing. I'm like, oh my god.
Hit a grand slam against the Marlins. And I go, okay, well, I guess we're not going to Philly.
Yeah.
So had to go to, which sucked because it at that point,
sick.
Like Baltimore admittedly kind of felt like a letdown because I was at that point, the vibes in Philly were as high as it could have been. And I was like, just extend this one, like to game 3. Let's just catch one game. Yeah. And they ended up sweeping them. So that wasn't ideal, but made the most of it. And going back to that World Baseball Classic, man, that was
such a good time.
That was an experience of a lifetime for sure.
That was such a good time.
I'm already looking forward to the what is it going to be, 2026?
Yeah.
Right?
7, 6,
3, 4, 5, 6. It's every 4 years, right? Yeah. So 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're listening and you're even remotely thinking about going, highly recommend.
Do it.
I mean, that is an experience you will not forget.
That's a top 5 baseball experience for me.
Absolutely.
That's like just an overall generic category of a baseball experience. Unbelievable. Getting to see culture and getting to see, just like what true fandom can look like instead of boring American fandom.
Speaking of categories, this podcast has also produced some interesting segments, I will say. The 3-0 fakes, which I feel like kind of fell off.
We could bring out a retirement.
We may need to bring that back into play because the 3-0 fakes where we're just talking nothing but conspiracy theories, like that was a heck of a segment.
We arguably have more to work with now. I think there's been, since it's been retired, we got a lot more conspiracies that we could pull the thread on a little bit.
Yeah, we could get into some real dicey topics, but we could have fun with that. And then I think the crowd favorite 3-0 change-ups. I mean, that both of those I think were your idea. Like I think,
I'm out there, man.
You're an idea machine.
Just
3-0 change-ups,
some weird stuff.
Giving us an opportunity to talk about some things we're curious about, some things we're maybe a little passionate about. Like I think Costco was like the first one we did.
Yeah.
We've talked about some things since then, some
fast
one-off
food,
things here, there. Fast food, cereal, pizza, board games, flying.
Yeah.
Christmas,
Thanksgiving.
Nice Christmas, Thanksgiving. Nice way to get us through the off season the last couple years. We got some DMs.
Let's do it.
I think we even got a voicemail too that we can run through here. AJ leading us off here says, my favorite segments have been you two hating the gimmicks the commish has put in and proposed. You guys are great at it. It helps me and my friends love baseball.
I love that. If there's anyone that's going to remain skeptical as we get older, I think it's us.
With age,
it's only going to get worse.
I hate to say it's not going the other direction, like where it's only going to get worse. But the beautiful thing about that though is like the people that listen to us as they get older, they're going to eventually start to see what we've been seeing this whole time. To go, you know what?
Yeah.
Like just leave baseball alone.
Yeah.
Just leave it alone. And
get off my lawn.
They'll eventually, we've crossed over the 30 threshold. So
yeah, it's all downhill from here.
It doesn't get better.
I ain't holding any punches.
Nate has been known to not hold any punches, so I believe him when he says that. Jack says, I miss the old Texas outro. This is for the OGs that were listening like way
Augie
back
Garrido.
in the day. The Augie outro. I gotta say, I was going back and forth like the last couple days.
That brought some heat.
I was like, should I bring that back? Like that was a strong way to close out the episode.
I think you should.
I mean, you want to talk about relevance. I mean, it's our literal namesake. He goes in on it, just talking about taking this, taking that.
I think we bring it back.
I may put that back into the mix.
R.I.P. Augie. I think he was still alive when we were doing it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that sheet of paper that I had scribbled the sort of ideas that I had for the pod from like day one. That was, I will say, that was in there. That was in the mix. That was that was a plan from the jump, was to include that as the outro. And that was a strong way to close out an episode.
When it was the 3-0 Take podcast by Dirt to Diamonds Baseball.
Correct.
Man, fit that on a business card.
Fit on a hat. Ben says his favorite part of the podcast was our fantasy league. He said it's been such a fun 2 years in the league. Thank you guys for all you do. The fantasy league has been awesome, man. Like that, I'm really glad we started doing that.
Yeah.
That really gave us, like, I think this year was like, had to have been like our 5th year doing it, 4th or I think it was closer to, I think it was our 5th year doing it. It's just giving us a chance to, like, there's usually like a dozen, maybe even 14 people. It gives us a chance to get to know them a lot more, and they get to know us a lot more, and just gives us an opportunity to do something we love doing, which is fantasy baseball. And really glad we decided to do that. So maybe some announcements on that.
Probably why I've lost all my hair, but
yeah. And you're looking at the reigning champ, by the way, so careful with how you...
stress ball. Yeah, Ben says that because he won one of those years, 2 years he was in it. So it's probably what that comment came
I was the reason he didn't win back-to-back. So careful with anybody out there how you address me. It's fantasy champ before anything else.
Yeah.
Mama Reyes actually chimed in. She said her favorite was the YouTube or the vlog from our trip to Boston for the AL wildcard game, which is wild given the outcome of that game. Like, I don't know if I'd want to sit there and watch my son just in pain, in such pain and turmoil, you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm sure I know because I was getting texts from her yelling. I know she was yelling at the TV, so she's probably just feeling the pain with me. But that's I mean, you did a good job on that, man. The vlogs they hit. The vlog come around every so often. You're gonna get another one this year, but
because you got to remember, like we're on opposite coast here. Like if you're not familiar with our situation, like our setup here, like Nate's, I mean, he was out here in Virginia. He was like right down the road, and then around middle school, he moved out west. And the only times we can really get together when you got these big events. And like Nate said, you'll be getting a vlog here this year, maybe multiple. Who knows? We'll see. Speaking of vlogs, my mom also chimed in. She said her favorite was the World Baseball Classic vlog. She said. Should you guys never miss an opportunity to scrutinize stadium food? Yeah, that's true.
We have high standards, Mama. We have high. Okay,
well, that's true. We do scrutinize stadium food, but we also tell you when it hits.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, there were some things that I'm thinking of. I'm gonna get this wrong. I get it wrong every time, but they have the best ice cream.
Oh, Scoop Wells.
I always say well scoops or so. I don't know what. I always botch it somehow. I mean, when something like that pops up, we let you know. And if you go back in those vlogs, we've made in those respective ballparks, we make our rounds and we tell you what's what and what's not. So
Chase Field with the D-back dog every freaking
the only entree type food that was available for that entire tournament. That was a bold move on their part. But Jake says his favorite part, my last two summer jobs, I'll never forget listening to Kyle and Nate every day. How about that?
Hey,
that seems to be
what that summer job was. Doesn't sound like you were too productive, Jake.
Well, I think that's a theme. Like there's a handful of folks out there that listen to us sort of like on the job as
I like that.
Some background noise or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're listening, but they just, put it on the background and
are going to appreciate that.
AJ says when Nate shaved his beard because he fell off a bike. That was the scooter. That was the electric scooter. That
was the scooter. That was not a proud moment. And That was the last time I've shaved. So
That still caught me by surprise. You just like showed up to the pod and
yeah.
I'm like, my guy, what happened?
Yeah, well, not pretty. I have no interest in getting back on one of those things. Although I did get on one the very next day, but I've retired. You just got one.
I just got one for Christmas. I'm pumped, dude.
I have no interest. Those death machines. No interest. I hit a tree, if anyone's wondering. I hit a pothole because some lady was swerving into me, and then it wasn't a pot. It was one of those manhole covers, and then you know. Wasn't exactly sober when it happened, so that made it worse.
Not.
And
no,
then
of course not.
hit a tree and busted open my chin and had to shave my beard. So thanks for bringing that memory back. I really appreciate that.
Vinny says, you guys calling me out on the podcast for saying the Brewers are better than the Pirates. What we said was,
When was this?
correct me if I'm wrong, this was the whole thing when we were talking about the Pirates making greater stride, like making more of an effort to improve their club. Do you remember this whole saga?
The Pirates making it better.
Yeah, and like on paper, the Brewers were the better team, obviously. But remember, you and I were both on the same page. Like the Pirates were making greater strides to improve their team than the Brewers were. The Brewers were just kind of sitting on their hands. This was like, I want to say last offseason, maybe
you
two
could
off
copy and
seasons
paste
ago.
that statement for I don't know how many off seasons.
I know, but this one got heated. I do remember. I do remember. Yeah.
Well, looks like we were both wrong. So,
well, no. Again, our point was we were right in our point of that the Pirates were making more of an effort, like they were doing more at that given point in time than the Brewers.
It's all relative.
Brewers are just a better team, obviously.
Yeah.
Dustin says it's been a couple years ago, but I got a call out on the show for tweeting about you guys giving me the idea to give all the kids on my daughter's t-ball team a bag of Big League Chew.
Love that. That was a fun little ride. They decided to go a different way. I think they really got into like NIL and started focusing less sponsorships and more like, with having like specific athletes. So that's why things kind of changed, but they were a great little partnership that we had with them. Got my favorite shirt in my closet, the Big League Chew shirt. So yeah, that was a fun ride. Still shout out to Big League Chew. No ill will there. That's
we'll always love Big League Chew.
And that's hands down I think probably one of my favorite things about our podcast is that we got to say that we were sponsored by them. That's sick.
That was fun. And we got a little bit of I'll just say we're going to circle back on the Big League Chew thing here in just a minute. We've got some clips from some interviews we've done. Where are we at here? Daniel says, okay, so this was the segment that this was the comment I told you before we hopped on that I said, I don't remember. I know we did it because it's like that fuzzy memory you have where you're like, I know it happened, but I couldn't tell you anything about it.
My memory is worse than yours. So let's see.
Dustin says it's been a couple of years ago, but I already read that one. Daniel says going way back, the accessory segment was gold. Do you remember an accessory segment?
Like we're talking about players?
It must have been. Like it must have just been us talking like
it's just swagger, like sleeves, tape.
And maybe like ranking like who had the best in the league or something like that. But it was apparently in a segment. And I remember it, but I don't.
Sounds like something we would do.
Remember it.
What's crazy is that I feel like we were probably pro accessories back then. I think I've since shifted to where there's too many accessories now.
No, I think I went back and listened to some old episodes, and we both. I think you
cool on the accessories.
You were just like, I'm more of an old school guy, and then it was a little bit of a bell curve. I think you were like, no, I'm down with the flair, and then you're like, no, bring it back.
Yeah,
I think that's the evolution.
Yeah, it's been. I don't know. You need some accessories, but I just like relax. Was Yoenis Cespedes still playing? That's probably like a lot of my targeted hate.
Yeah, that was
because I don't think
much.
Yeah, maybe Acuna was starting to, or Azuna. Just the amount of like highlighter yellow, random non.
That was a movement.
Accessories. I hated that.
The highlighter yellow was a movement back in the late 2010s.
I'm glad that's dead.
He also said the baseball history, today in baseball history was another good segment too.
It was a tough one. You eventually just kind of run out of stuff. So, yeah, when you do it a few years, you either start repeating it or struggling to find good stuff. But I don't know. Maybe this.
No, it's
bring
done.
that back. It's done.
No, it's done. Because you're exactly right. Like it's like, yeah, you're making new history theoretically, yeah, every year,
Yeah.
but it's just you run into the same ones, and you run into the same ones that would be worth repeating.
Do you remember your favorite baseball history?
My favorite, and I actually just went back and listened to this today, and I almost pulled it just to have it, is when we both found out. I think you actually read it to me because we would alternate reading them each episode, and is when you read off to me the game that they played on skates.
That's what I was gonna say.
I was like,
playing on
what?
a frozen pond.
They're playing on a frozen pond. I think there was like 2,000 people there.
Yeah,
and they were allowed to like skate past the bag. Like you didn't have to stop. Like if you're going into second, you didn't have to stop at the bag.
Yeah.
Just insane. And the score was like 25-30
it was
or something.
ridiculous.
Which,
yeah.
the more I think about it, it seems a little low. The more I think about it, if you're playing on a pond, I feel like that would just run up the score. But yeah, that was my favorite.
Imagine like not catching a fly ball and you miss it and it lands right next to you. You just go down in the water because it shoots through the
everybody
ice.
Everybody else
wild,
goes down.
Yeah, I don't know when that was. It was definitely like the 100 or 1890s. But whatever. Yeah, that was a good one. That was my favorite too.
I think it was 1861. Like we're talking like Civil War era. I think we mentioned that too.
Yeah,
that's when it was crazy.
No big
but
deal.
Yeah, that was my favorite. Murray says starting solo on the pod, then adding Nate, who went on to give us a snippet of his singing career by singing "Sweet Caroline." Congrats on 500.
I was curious if anyone would remember that. So I appreciate.
I think about it all the time.
Was that like episode 3? Was it
episode 3?
Crazy.
Episode 3.
I do think about it all the time. I still hate that song. Whenever it plays at like parties or weddings or whatever, my wife's singing it. She looks over at me and I'm like, ain't doing it. The only time I sang that song was for a bet that did not go well.
I don't know how we got away with that because I'm pretty sure you sang over the audio. I had like inserted the audio.
Yeah, which I was very grateful for, by the way. Very grateful for, because I didn't need to be, I don't need that out there in the universe. I don't need
Go back and listen to that. But like we said, don't listen to any other like super old early stuff because it was just terrible.
Yeah. Don't stick around too long. You can listen to the voice.
Go back and listen to that snippet. Murray also said, you guys helped me get through some long drives and more importantly, some long work days. Love you guys in the pod. Cheers to the next 500.
Love that. Love you, Murray. You're the man.
Josh says, Josh Luatua says the flashback to the most humble half closet origins of this dynasty. He's talking about the picture that I post from time to time where it's literally, I had the mic like hanging from the like coat rack in my walk. It wasn't even a walk-in closet. You couldn't walk in. It was one of those like real narrow closets.
The sliding doors.
Or it was like like the accordion doors or something.
Yeah.
And I'm just in there trying to get the best sound quality that I could. And that's sort of what we were dealing with when we really got going. So
unbelievable.
Sean says too many memories. Been a fan since Kyle's solo episode 1. He also mentioned the fact that we shouted out his engagement. I think it was like I think it was episode 79 or something.
All right.
But you gave him a little shout out. I think he did it like during the home run derby, if I recall. I went back and listened to it and
gave
him a little shout out. We were big on the shout outs back in the day because we really wanted to. I mean, we still try to make our listeners feel valuable and all that, but like it was, I mean, we've certainly grown since we started, but it was a lot easier when we first got going to
there was like 12 of them
to show the people some love. So we need to get back to our roots in that sense. We gotta
you're probably right.
We gotta get back to creating building the community here. Lastly here for DMs, Michael says, congrats, gentlemen, on 500 episodes. I'm a big fan of the show and try not to miss an episode. Here's to 500 more. Cheers.
Is that your brother?
No.
Oh.
No. Yeah, these are all of these DMs are just like extended family. Extended family. Yeah. We did have one voicemail that I can... If I can find it, here we go. Here's our voicemail.
All right.
Hey, Kyle and Nate, congrats on 500. Big achievement. Very nice job with the podcast. Thank you for continuing to make it for all of the listeners. Always appreciate listening to it every week. One of my favorite moments is Nate not believing that Pujols could get to 700 homers. Still makes me laugh all the time. As we know, balls are juiced. That's all I have to say. Congrats again, guys. Take care.
Heck yes, those balls were juiced. There's no doubt in my mind.
Dude, that race to 700 was actually one of my favorite. Like,
be real, it's
bits.
an odd hill to die on, but
it was one of my favorite bits that we had. Like, you just didn't think it would happen, and then the whole like apology episode where you had to pen you had to pen the apology and read it off. Like that was fun. That was real fun.
Oh man. That's a good memory.
Speaking of memories, I know I'm sort of moving quick here, but still got a little bit more to get to. I mentioned some clips that I had from interviews that we had done, and so I went back and pulled some snippets from some of the favorite interviews we've done over the years. A lot of which, like you and I were talking about before we hopped on, was like right in the heart of COVID because like that
was a cool stretch.
That 2020 season, we were able to talk to a lot of guys because there was just nothing going on. And these guys, like in the early stages of COVID, like when everything shut down, like March,
and
April.
Podcasts were still newer.
Yeah, like on the newer end. And these guys just wanted to talk baseball. Like surely as the pandemic went on, they're like, okay, I just want to get back to playing baseball. But in that early bit, we were able to talk to some pretty cool names. So I'll just go ahead and play this and we can sort of talk through it as it's going. But it's just going to be a singular clip and we'll just run through it. Let's see what we got here.
All right, so we are joined here by 2019 second overall pick, Team USA Pan Am gold medalist, Gatorade National Baseball Player of the Year, Under Armour All-American, Sports Illustrated cover athlete, and Coleyville, Texas native.
What an intro.
Mr. Bobby Witt Jr. The phrase franchise shortstop popped up a number of times. When you hear that, knowing that phrase is being attached to you, how do you interpret that, and how do you deal with that kind of attention on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's always kind of cool to just see those things, but really it's on all that stuff's on paper until it's in like true fine print and everything. Until it's actually true, then I'll believe it what I see. So I just kind of gotta go out there, like I've been saying, and just keep grinding throughout it all, because this is a grind. And you could say all you want about this and that, but until I say if it's not been proven, then can't take anything for granted.
All right, so we are here with
a young Bobby Witt,
All-Star and
no facial hair, no mullet,
Liam Hendricks.
How did your slider become your go-to pitch?
How did my slider become my go-to pitch?
Because it wasn't when we started dating.
Yeah, definitely. Like, how does my slider become my go-to pitch? Because it wasn't when we first started dating. So that was 2010 when we started dating, and I was prototypical generic Twins right-hander. Through 91 with a little bit of movement and a good changeup. That was my thing. So my changeup was my go-to pitch then. I had a curveball, I had a slider, but my changeup was my best pitch. And then, I just when I moved to the pen, my slider started playing up because I started throwing it harder. And as I started throwing it harder, I realized the break on it was a lot sharper. And I just had a lot of good swings and misses. And since then, that's been the fail-safe pitch where I've always kind of had that in the back pocket, and I've always just had, like, if I ever need to have a pitch, that's just been the one I've gone to. But I throw it a little differently than most. I put, like, Kirsten, can you grab the ball for me on the table?
You remember this? He gave us a
demonstration.
demonstration.
Yeah.
Oh God.
That was coming in hot.
So she's yelling at me saying she has a natural cutter. She's like the female version of Mariana.
All right, so we are joined here by former Oakland A and current premier baseball personality, Dallas Braden. I know you like to joke about it, that this perfect game was kind of your claim to fame, and you just happened to have one good day at the park, and that kind of sets you up for the rest of your baseball career, even outside of playing. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, are you okay with that? Like, are you okay kind of being characterized as this guy that just went out and had a good day at the park, or you kind of take a little bit of offense to that?
Why would I ever take offense to that? That's reality, man. Like to be self-aware and to be able to be honest with yourself, like, that's something that I think very few people can do and or are uncomfortable doing.
That one fired me
here
up.
with the electric Greg Amsinger of MLB Network.
I know this sounds like I'm a company show. Trust me, I know this sounds like it. But Rob Manfred is a good commissioner. People are going to be like, whoa, come on, no way. Hung out with the guy. He has made more change to a game that hates change than anybody could fathom. You have to agree with that.
But would you argue that that's
more
by force, that like nobody necessarily wants that change, or do you think he's just kind of?
Oh, no. When you make a change to anything in Major League Baseball, you're going to piss a lot of people off.
Right.
Without a doubt. So you automatically prove to the world that you don't care about your approval rating as a commissioner. Rob Manfred is the best we're going to get. He's the best guy for the job right now. I know that's probably not the answer you were looking for, but that is my honest opinion. That's my opinion.
I love it. Standing by it. I mean,
that's a great point.
You kind of brought up presidents. Like, it's kind of known that your approval rating while you're in office, I mean, it said that Reagan was hated when he was in office, right?
Right.
And we look back and he's like one of the greatest presidents ever. So do you think that's going to be the same situation to where we're going to look back 20, 30 years down the road and be like, Manfred really did some stuff?
Without a doubt.
All right, so we are joined here by baseball icon and founder of Big League Chew, Rob Nelson.
When I made the first batch, I baked it because you had to heat it and bake it. It came out like a half-inch thick tray of brownies because I went with root beer and I went with maple flavored from the Fred Meyer grocery store next to the ballpark. I thought kids would love brown gum. The Wrigley people said, Rob, you're the idea guy. Leave the gum to us. So that didn't work at all. But I did, the way I cut up the gum, I used one of those round pizza knives that when they make slices of pizza, they just roll the knife through the pie. And that's how I shredded the gum.
I love it, man.
There you go. It was like a little highlight reel from some interviews over the years. That's not even all the people we were able to talk to. We've talked to a bunch more, but
those were a lot of cool people.
Those were some of our favorites for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that, just hearing, like, putting that little highlight reel together, I'm like, man, time is flying by.
I know.
Like that Bobby Witt one, he sounds like he's 12 years old. I mean, he basically was when we
weren't kidding. No facial hair, no mullet. He was not the Bobby Witt that you recognize today.
This was like fresh off the draft at that point.
Yeah.
And then, like somewhat like Greg Amsinger, Dallas Braden, like they had some like inspirational stuff. Like if you go back and listen, like those were two in particular that were like.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably gonna shock some people. I think Greg Amsinger was my favorite interview we ever did.
That was a fun.
He's the man. I love that guy, and I know
cool dude.
He's kind of polarizing. He's probably I don't know why he gets hate personally, but like I think is one of my favorite baseball people. He loves what he does, and he does it really well, and I love that guy. That was a good interview. I forgot about the one. That's an under the radar one for sure.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's sort of, I mean, we could go on and on about this, but
probably,
that wraps up our walk down memory lane. Cheers 500. Cheers of the next 500. Who knows where things will go. I do know, like we sort of hinted at, we've been mentioning it, but we alluded to it earlier. We will be in Atlanta, and we'll be there for the All-Star game.
And Home Run Derby.
Well, we'll be there for the Home Run Derby, but we'll be in the park for the All-Star game. But actually, some breaking news. I haven't even told you this yet.
I don't know what's happening right now.
I actually pulled the trigger on the tickets today for both the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. So we're going to both now. We're going to both.
That's what I was saying. I was like, we're going to be in Atlanta, but I don't know what's going on. Let's go.
No, tickets are not
huge.
cheap, dude. Yeah. Not cheap. But I was like, hey, credit to Meredith. Credit to Meredith. She was actually the one. She's like, no, you know what? You guys take like a trip a year. She's like, you need to do it.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? Before we wrap up, we gotta. I think the wives deserve.
It's a great way to wrap it up.
They deserve all the respect in the world for putting up with this nonsense. Like, what is it? Like 2 nights a week, we're basically just out of commission for a few hours, and then when the postseason hits, it's chaos during the postseason, and we're always hopping on for brainstorming sessions and all that. So they put up with a lot, but you know what? Tip of the cap to the wives.
Yeah, man. What's crazy? It's kind of hard to even fathom. When we started this, I didn't even know my wife. I didn't even know her yet. So we've both. You've known Meredith a while, since high school. So it's wild that we've gotten married, and we've gotten dogs, and we've bought homes, and huge major. I had hair. Like, there's been big life changes, throughout the history of this podcast. So you're right, man. Cheers to them. You're right. She's probably making dinner right now as we're talking right now. So
yeah, Meredith had asked me, she's like, you just want to eat when you're done? I'm like, you may just need to eat whenever you're hungry, because I don't know when I'll be up. So that's sort of the theme of the show.
That's probably what is this year? How long have you been married now? You just said your anniversary.
5.
5-year
anniversary.
See, we haven't even had our first yet. So I'm assuming by year 5, probably not eating dinner at the same time. She's probably just gonna be like, I'm hungry, I'm eating. Screw this guy. So as of right now, she's still waiting it out for me. But yeah, man. Big life moves, big life changes. Grateful for you, buddy. I love it. This is we've said it. We have big dreams for this. We have big aspirations. We have big goals. But if this is all that comes out of it, I think we're still both pretty dang happy with what we have. So
gotten to do some pretty cool stuff. Even if this was it, we've gotten to do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So thank you to all you incredible listeners, and fans, and people that have DM'd over the years, that have been listening for the chunk of time. If you're new, we're so grateful for you. This is a podcast that tries to keep it real, keep it friendly, to the point where you can play and listen to this at any point around anyone. And we hope that there's some enjoyment there, but we wouldn't be here and been able to do the things that we've done or talk to the people we've talked to without your support. So thank you for all of that. And man, like you said, cheers to another 500. Next one, 1,000's gonna hit a little bit different, man. I wonder what do you think life's gonna look like? Maybe kids in the picture, maybe
kids running around crawling all over us while we're trying to talk about Bobby Witt Jr.'s retirement or something. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I agree with everything you said. Shout out to those of you that listen. Shout out to those of you that watch. And regardless how long you've been supporting us, your support is ultimately what drives this. Because like we say all the time, if it wasn't for you guys, we'd be sitting here. Which I think we've said before. Like we wouldn't mind sitting here talking to just each other about baseball. Like we could easily pass the time, but to be able to have an audience there and people that are willing to engage with us, whether they agree or disagree, it makes it all worth it. And I think part of, I don't want to say the reward for that. I do know that there has been a handful of folks asking me about possible merch making a return, because the merch has been MIA for some time.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you,
it's coming.
The merch is coming. Still TBD. I will admit, I was hoping to have things really ironed out so we could just go full launch into it, but still got to work out some details. But just hang tight. The merch is coming. I'll make an announcement. This is sort of like the soft opening, if you will, but I'm going to make the official announcement once it finally goes live and y'all can finally get to snagging some of that stuff. But yeah, again, thank you guys for everything. And it's kind of weird starting the year with like a wrap up, sort of like a thank you guys, but we're very much looking forward to what this season holds and the seasons beyond that. Lord willing, if we're able to go make it that far, if this thing keeps moving,
we'll go till 80, man.
We'll be here having probably the same takes when we're 80, because we're just old. We're basically old men now, just sitting here talking ball. But thank you guys for your support, for listening, for watching, and I think it's about it.
Amen to that. You guys know the drill. Don't go chasing curveballs.
We love you all, and as always, looking forward to talking more baseball with you guys soon. Until next time, stay filthy.